what we learn about blues playing is instantly transferable to rock and roll lead guitar as well. However, there are some crucial differences about playing a rock and roll solo, and it's these differences that we're going to explore in this little series of lessons on chord-based rock and roll riffs. If we launch into our rock and roll solo using normal approach of just the pentatonic scales, the blues scale, the country scales over a rock and roll beat, it sort of works okay. Lacking the excitement that rock and roll soloing needs. It needs more attack, more edge, more guts, more panache, more of this. Between those two approaches to playing lead guitar is in the second approach I was concentrating mainly on working around chord shapes as opposed to working with scale patterns. So for this series of lessons we're pretty much going to forget about scales for a while and concentrate just on chords. So to kick off, let's just have a look at what I think for most of you will be a pretty familiar chord shape pattern, the E-shaped bar chord. And let's look at these chord notes against the major scale with its keynote on the E string. This enables us to identify the chord notes in the key of the chord root. Now, don't worry if that didn't make too much sense at this stage. All we've done is taken a familiar chord shape. So here I'm playing the chord of A major using an E-shaped bar chord. Being an E-shaped bar chord, we know that we're working within the E-shaped octave pattern from the cage system. So using our sandwich exercise knowledge, we can join these notes together with a major scale. And use the numbering of those notes in the major scale to work out the notes of the chord. So that's clearly our root notes, note 1 if you like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's our fifth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Next note in the chord is the root note again, the 8th note of the scale. And then we start again. 1, 2, 3. The next note in the scale is the 3rd. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the next note. Down there by the bar, and then we've got 6, 7, 8. The top note is the root note again. So we've got the 3 root notes, and in between we've got a 5th, 3rd, another 5th, and that's what makes up that chord shape. Now, what this enables us to do is label each note of the chord in a way that I promise you is going to prove incredibly useful the further you develop your guitar skills and knowledge. What this does is it helps you understand a chord, and anything that you do with that chord you can then instantly translate to other shapes and other chords. Okay, so now let's begin looking at how we can actually use this shape to create riffs. Let's start off with a real nice simple idea. We take the top two notes of the chord, the fifth and the root, and play them as a double stop, like this. I've got my finger across both the top two strings at the fifth fret here, and I'm picking straight across both strings, like that. So try sliding into them with this sort of rhythm. Okay, now notice that exactly the same pair of notes, the fifth and the root, can be found repeated an octave lower. So we can see, we can give them the same treatment. This time I'm using my third finger. I'm across the fourth and fifth strings here, and again picking straight across both strings. And we can play these two ideas off against each other like this. Dramatic sound. So look out for that one. The root and the fifth played together as a double stop. That one pops up all over the place. Okay, now let's look at the fifth and the third played together. And we'll add that to what we're doing already. So here's our fifth note and our third note. Fifth note on the second string, on the B string, third note on the G string. Again, we're just picking across both strings. And we can add that into what we're doing already. So we've got our root and fifth here, fifth and third, and our bottom root and fifth. We compare the root and third together and play those as a double stop. So there you go, root on the fourth string there, third on the third string. And we can put all these things together pretty much at random, as long as we keep the momentum going. And that's just a very straightforward way of using the chord. Okay, so that's just taking the major chord shape, pairing up notes together, adding a bit of technique with the slide, and playing them with a good crisp rhythm. These all important elements of rock and roll riffs. Now let's look at what happens when we add notes to the basic major chord, starting with the fourth note. A favourite trick of second generation rock and roll bands like the Rolling Stones and the Who was to use the suspended fourth sound. This is where you add the fourth note to the major chord, but then make sure it resolves back to the third, like this. So here we can see I've got the fifth and the third, and I'm adding the fourth there and taking the fourth off again back to the third. time playing both strings. And then we do exactly the same thing with the third and the root. Probably switch to the stronger fingers, and then we're adding the fourth and taking it away there. Whoops. The second commonly used idea I'm going to show you is one I think you may well recognise, especially if you're a big Chuck Berry fan. It's called the Unison V, and it looks like this. Now the word unison in music just means two notes that sound the same, but on the guitar played on different strings. So there's the fifth note in the key of A, it's the note E, played at the fifth fret on the second string, but then we find the same note on the third string at the fret 9. So that and that have the same pitch but subtly different tone because they're on different strings. This is the other way of doing it when we actually bend the string until it's tuned up to that note. You can hear they're the same. So Chuck Berry's favourite lick was very much that. She usually played while duck walking across the stage. I quite like combining the two methods together, the slide and the bend. It not only sounds good but looks quite good when you're performing as well. Finally, for this lesson, let's look at what happens when we add the sixth note of the scale to the chord. This is often used to echo the rhythm guitar added sixth shuffle idea. So on rhythm guitar you do something like this, adding the sixth to the fifth here in the bottom octave. But in lead guitar you might do something like adding the sixth on the second string here to the fifth there. You can also use the sixth much in the same way as we used the suspended fourth earlier. You can hear a similar sort of effect. So quite a versatile little idea, that one. And you can combine the two together. All sorts of ways like that. Okay, so that's really just a quick look at some basic ideas, all built around that E-shaped bar chord pattern, adding a couple of scale notes here and there. Now, just with those ideas alone, we can play some pretty neat improvised rock and roll solos. Moving the ideas that we've learnt in this lesson around a 12-bar blues is pretty straightforward. So, in a 12-bar blues in A, we'd be using the chord A, D, and E. Think of them in those three positions: the 5th fret for the A, 10th fret for the D, and the 12th fret for the E. By using that as a reference, we should be able to play, we can improvise a 12-bar blues without any backing really, just using the chord-based ideas that we've been working on. It might go something like this. we might move that round a 12 bar. In the next lesson, we're going to look at what happens when we add some non-scale notes to the basic major chord, what we call non-diatonic notes. So look forward to seeing you in that lesson. Meanwhile, let's play out with this lesson. Let's play out with a bit of a rock and roll jam. See if you can join me in this using some of the ideas we've been over in this lesson. We'll do it in the key of A against the backing track at 140 beats per minute. Slightly slower than full on. So join me in this after the counting. 1, 2, 3, 4.